But I want to start with Novak Djokovic winning Wimbledon and not being eligible to play in the U.S. Open, which, to his credit, John McEnroe teed off against. And I just want to make this as clear and easy for everyone out there to understand as possible. There should be no COVID restrictions whatsoever at this point in time for any athlete playing any sport anywhere in the country, and I believe anywhere in the world. And the fact that we are not allowing Djokovic the opportunity to travel to America to play in the U.S. Open is an absolute mockery of science, and it is indefensible. As I mentioned a moment ago, we know, based on a recent study, we wrote about it at Outkick, you can go read the study yourself if you would like, that the initial 2 COVID shots provide 5% in protection against infection from COVID. Let me repeat that. According to a recent study, the Moderna and Pfizer 2-shot regime provides 5% protection against infection from COVID. Remember last year, at this time, they were still essentially trying to tell you that the COVID shot stopped you from getting COVID and also prevented the spread. That is not true. Right now, we are at 5% COVID efficacy. And overwhelmingly, for the initial 2 Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. I'm calling them COVID shots because they're not vaccines. Even a booster, the 3rd shot, only protects you at a 20% level. We are going to require Novak Djokovic or anyone else who is entering into this country, we are going to require them to get a shot that offers no protection virtually from the spread of COVID and no protection from getting COVID. We know this because virtually every Democrat politician on the planet, except for Joe Biden, has gotten 4, 5, 6, whatever the number is now, shots. And what do they say? Like Chuck Schumer right now, Senate Majority Leader, whenever they test positive, I'm grateful for the COVID shot. That's what Dr. Fauci said when he tested positive. These things don't work, and they don't work very efficiently at all. If you want to get them, you are certainly within your rights to get them. But the fact that we had a Biden administration that tried to mandate these shots, the fact that we are not allowing players in sports like Novak Djokovic to come to this country is absolutely, in my opinion, indefensible. And so I believe everybody should be able to come into this country. The vast majority of you do too. The joke, of course, is that Djokovic would be better off going down to the southern border and just walking across there where we don't actually require any sort of negative test in order to enter this country. So I asked the question. I said, Novak Djokovic won Wimbledon on Sunday, isn't eligible to come to America to play in the U.S. Open because he hasn't gotten the COVID shot. Should he be able to play in the U.S. Open even though he hasn't gotten the COVID shot? 96% of you, nearly 20,000 of you have voted in my poll. Again, I'm not claiming that it's a perfect representation of every poll out there, far from it, but 96% of you are saying, yes, he should be able to play in the U.S. Open, even though he hasn't gotten the COVID shot. 96%. Nearly 20,000 votes in. I'm not saying, again, that my audience is a perfect representation of the sports audience at large, but I bet the vast majority of sports fans do not believe that we should be banning him from playing in the U.S. Open over a shot that we know does not work very effectively or efficiently at all. COVID shot, Moderna, Pfizer, 5% effective according to a recent study. You can read about it on Outkick. 20% effective as it pertains to the booster. This is why many kids out there who are now eligible 6 years old to 5 years old. The data coming out from New York, I saw this story over the weekend, over 500,000 kids in New York City are between 6 months old and 5 years old, the newest group that can get the COVID shot. Only 11,000 of those kids, their parents have taken them to get the COVID shot. That's around a 2% rate. Alex Berenson was on with us last week on Clay and Buck. He said nationwide it's around 1% of eligible kids 6 months old to 5 years old. Parents are getting them the COVID shot. That's because people are now becoming aware that the COVID shot doesn't work and it provides limited protection, particularly for people who are otherwise young and healthy. In particular, even if you get COVID, I saw this story. We've got it up at Outkick right now. One of the Tour de France bikers tested positive for COVID. They still allowed him to participate in the competition, and he went out and he won stage 9 of the race. This is a high-level athlete, tests positive for COVID, doesn't just participate in the Tour de France afterwards. He went and won the 9th stage, I believe it was, of the Tour de France. That story is up on Outkick. So they allowed him to compete, and COVID was so debilitating to him, being COVID positive, that he still won one of the most arduous and difficult physical athletic events that exists in the world, still won stage 9 of the Tour de France even after having already tested positive for COVID. No athlete anywhere should be restricted from playing based on COVID positivity. One of the New York Mets came out and said this. More power to him. I think more athletes need to come out and say it publicly. There should be no restrictions whatsoever for athlete eligibility or play based on COVID. The COVID shots don't protect athletes from getting or spreading COVID. We got to just start treating this like what it is for most healthy people, which is a minor cold and or a virus that most of them don't even know that they've had. And I say that as someone who has not gotten the COVID shot and has had COVID twice already. I had the alpha version, and then I got the Omicron remix. There's all these new variants out there. I may get it for a third time. I'm not the greatest physical specimen on the planet. I had zero issues whatsoever with COVID.